Yeah, it's okay. Mike, at home, you can hear me okay? Yeah. Good evening, people here and at home. On this auspicious day of Chogo Duchin, the time that the Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma. Or was it yesterday or today or both?
Both.
Yeah, because it's two Tibetan 4th of the Kasa, 4th of the 6th, no? Yeah. So one was yesterday and one today. But anyway, so yeah, maybe today then also our auspicious day to talk about Chandakirti, right? So that's very fortunate. So also, in accordance to that, today whatever you engage in, that will multiply 100,000 times or something like that, or more. So it's also very fortunate to go with Chandakirti and then also generate, yeah. My finances, software. Huh? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so then the finance of merit is more important. Yeah, the investments of merit. So that increases today, and then especially that for that purpose, generate the most superior motivation of if we study the grounds and paths as we are in the moment, and then directly perceiving emptiness and practicing the 10 perfections, right, according to the 10 bhumis. Why? In order to progress on spiritual path, to attain an omniscient mind, to be really able to benefit sentient beings to the full extent, and have the ability, of course, to do all those things. So, very fortunate to go in that direction. So make sure we have those motivation that we want to progress on the bhumis in order to increase our capacities to help beings who are lost in samsara, who really depend on us. They're just waiting for us. So for that purpose, generate great motivation. And in the front, imagine Sakyamuni Buddha surrounded by the masters of India, Tibet, in particular, the master of the Nalanda tradition. Yeah, all the way up to his Holiness Dalai Lama. And then in front of yourself, and then surrounding yourself, countless beings undergoing the individual sufferings, and it's your responsibility to do something about it. And for that purpose, you lead them in the prayers. Yeah.
Page 73 in the Golden Book. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Sakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Sakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When I was supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wiser than I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, famed ablaze in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. The 3 like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit, qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. the purity that frees one from the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bound with bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness and death. Prostrated to the Arya Triple Gem, thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajgir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharavatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not division, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan being thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan.
I prostrate
regarding the kidneys and the three chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of using space, where powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation look after practitioners like a mother her child.
Akasambarasasana samarayapi
Tata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhiso. Are the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth. May inner and outer hindrances be transformed. May they be dispelled. May they be pacified. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here, right now. Page 93, Foundation of All Good Qualities. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correct devotion to the Guru is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. Please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me day and night takes its essence. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train the Supreme Bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train the Supreme Bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows of great energy. Please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows of great energy. Once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. Please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the stages and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. O Sajipaki Jukshin Meto Dramri Rabling Shi Nidegen Padli Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwai Drokunam Daksin La Jepasho Jetsun Lama Dampakenam Gichukala Gensetun Sintrik Jitar Sampe Lujenzin Mala Zabye No mandala kamriyatayami.
Sangye
Chodon suni chonam la chanchu badu dani gyamsu chi. Dagi chune gibe sunam gi. Rola penchi sangye drupa sho.
Sangye
Chodon suni chonam la chanchu badu dani gyamsu chi. Dagi chune gibe sunam gi. Rola penchi sangye drupa sho.
Sangye
Chodon suni chonam la chanchu badu dani gyamsu chi. Dagi chune gibe sunam gi. Rola penchi sangye drupa sho.
Yeah, so today start with a quotation of the sutras, according to the topic we are in. And there's a quotation you can find in the Kangyur, our Tibetan version, as well in the condensed discourses, translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi of the Pali tradition, the Samyutta Nikaya. There it says, form is like the body, right? The form aggregate, you could say. The form aggregate, the form is like a mass of foam. Yeah, so this talks about the 5 aggregates in relation to illusory appearances. Yeah, so our physical form, the form aggregate, is like foam in the UK, North Sea. You have the foam. Yeah, in the Netherlands, I remember, and we have a place called Scheveningen, which is very difficult to pronounce for those who are not Dutch. So in Scheveningen, or Schravenhagen, yeah, so you have the North Sea, and then you see Scheveningen here is a little bit below the sea level. It's very interesting to see. But yeah, and when there's a bit stormy weather, sometimes you have this foam, right, that piles up. And it looks very solid, but actually if you just grasp at it, it's very, how to say, fragile, It's very easy to destroy the foam, So our body is like that, It appears very solid. Also, when you look in the mirror, it appears very solid. But if you analyze, you can see that it's just a momentary changing nature of reality, and it's just over time and space that a certain amount of cells are ordered in a particular way, and then we say the body, but it's not that solid as it appears to be, right? So it's very similar to the foam of... if you really think about that, your cells changing so many billions every day, there's no really body that is the same as yesterday, right? Yeah. The body of yesterday and the body of today is different, It appears very solid, but actually it's just a process. And what we call the body, and then you see how interesting that meal imputed by the mind actually is, because what we actually call the body is just an imputation on a collection of cells being present at a particular time, at a particular location, right? That's what we call body. It's nothing more to be found than that. Yeah, so that's what it says here. Form is like a mass of foam. Because this verse you can find in the Kangyur of the Sanskrit tradition, and you can also find exactly the same verse as I just mentioned in the Pali canon, right? So then Chandakirti's interpretation of this verse is according to that even, the arats of the Shravakas and the Prajeka Buddhas and those on the noble paths, of the paths of seeing and meditation of the Sravaka and Prajeka paths, they realize emptiness. Yeah, that's one of the sources, Chandakirti, you can find back in Chandakirti's outer commentary. Yeah, in Chandakirti's outer commentary. So form, and it's also quoted in Lama Tsongkhapa's Eliminating the Intent. Yeah. So form is like a mass of foam. Yeah, the form aggregate is like this foam. It looks very solid, but actually it's not that solid as it appears. Feeling, the second aggregate, are like water bubbles. If there's a lot of rain, and then the rain goes into what do you call this little train, like a puddle. Yeah, when the rain goes into the puddle of water, then these bubbles, they pop up, yeah, when the rain comes, you know, yeah. So that doesn't stay very long; it just quickly disappears, you know. So feelings are like water bubbles, you know. I think that's one interpretation. I mean, the time of the Buddha, there were no, you know, the ones, the children, they have this circle thing. They put it in their soap mixture, and then the bubble comes. You know? Yeah, very similar. So feeling is like water bubbles, you know. Yeah. But then in Arya Nagarjuna says that our body is like a water bubble, to emphasize the fragile aspect. Yeah, and if you contemplate kasa, that the time of death is uncertain, right? When you contemplate the time of death is uncertain, then the last reason, the third reason, is that our body is like a water bubble, right? And then Arya Nagarjuna explains it, that these bubbles, they appear on the plains, on the mountains, but then when the strong wind is there, then they don't last very long. They straight away are, you know, broken. You know? So feelings are like that. It says in this particular quotation, right? Feelings are like water bubbles. Yeah. So feeling, they appear pain or happiness, or they appear so solid, you know. But actually, it's not that solid. It comes and then bites and then intensifies and then goes away, right? Every form of pain, every form of happiness has intensities, right? It doesn't appear solid. But we see it as very solid and then say, oh, my sickness, oh, my pain, oh, my this, my that, right? But yeah, pain is also dependent, of course, on conditions. And sometimes the more you get annoyed by it, the more suffering you experience, right? And the more you just accept it, the easier it is to even deal with very, very, intensive forms of pain. Yeah? Mental attitude makes a big difference, you know. But yeah, feeling can be seen as a very solid entity, but actually they're like water bubbles, you know. They pop very quickly and transform in another type of feeling. Yeah. Perceptions are like mirages. Yeah, perception is like a mirage, that what we see appears real. You know, when you see the mirage in the UK, it's still winter. It's kind of, what is it today? It's 10th of July, and still 17 degrees or something outside. So no summer this time. But in summer, then you have especially on the highways, on the motorways, I call them here, I suppose. They have on the bitumen, right? This mirage. So it looks like water there, you know. But actually, that looks solid. But the closer you get, the more you see it's not really there, you know. So same with our perceptions. They just, as Anil Seth calls, controlled hallucinations. Yeah. It's a very interesting term. Controlled hallucinations. Yeah, non-perception is because hallucination is non-perception and perception is controlled hallucination. He says. So also there you can see in the science of neuroscience that what he puts forward is what appears to our mind is just very subjective and not really there. The way we think it's there. Yeah. So here, same thing with perceptions are like a mirage. It looks very, very much out there, but actually is just causing conditions. The closer you get, and the mirage disappears. Right. So the more you analyze your perceptions, the more you see they similar to that. Yeah, they're not that solid as they appear. So the closer you get. Same with analyzing the self of a person, analyze the self of phenomena. The more you analyze, the closer you get, it disappears. The solid aspect disappears, right? So same with a mirage, or with a rainbow, same thing. It looks very solid out there, rainbow, a rainbow, or two sometimes. But actually, the closer you get, it just disappears because it's just an angle. You look, and then the reflection is there, or you know, clouds in the sky. They look very, very solid. But once you're in it, you can see it's just kaza. I'm a bit lost today. It's just moisture, right? Kaza? Yeah, you call that. Yeah, there's another word for that. Water vapor, or yeah. So yeah, perceptions are like mirages. Yeah, mental formations are like a plantain tree. Yeah, so perceptions here is referring to, it's translated as perception, touché. Yeah, mental formations are like plantain trees. Like there's sometimes we translate it as a banana tree or a water tree. That they don't have a trunk, right? There's no solid entity. Yeah, plantain tree is like that or not? Yeah, what is a plantain tree? Yeah, banana tree. Yeah, we had a banana tree. One of our residents. Yeah, we have many trees actually in Serai, my house, the house we built for Western monks who study the Geshe program. And we have many trees. We have so many mangoes that we have to have mango for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or there's only like 2 weeks at a time. We have buckets full of mangoes. And then one point of time we have, what else do we have? Oh, guavas. There are also so many guavas. But you have to be careful because the bats, the fruit bats, they get into them. So when they in there, you have to, especially with COVID and things like that. It was before COVID here, then in South India, there were kind of infections of the fruit bats. So then we thought, maybe we can't eat them, but because the fruit bats, they come and at night with the big wings, and then they're gonna eat the guavas. And then, of course, after eating, what happens? You have to go to the toilet. So then what they do, they go like, they fly like this and it goes against the wall. Yeah. So then, but also then there's So then one of our members of the house, he said, let's plant a banana tree, but he planted exactly where it's very dry, so it didn't produce. I think produced 5 bananas like this size. Yeah, but you could see that tree also. It's kind of there's no trunk, right? It's kind of nothing there. Yeah, sorry, today I'm a bit off the path. Plantain trees. Then consciousness is like an illusion, right? That same with a magician. When a magician points an illusion. These days you have modern illusions with disappearing planes, or you still see that on TV. The famous one is the woman. There's always a woman cut into 2, but then that on one side is one lady and the other side is another lady, and they just sit like this. And then they cut in between. Yeah. So in the first time you see, but the moment you know the trick, you see it's an illusion, right? So in a similar way, once you have realized emptiness, then you know what appears is not really reality. Yeah. So after you realize emptiness, then what appears to you is, after you come out of the meditation, appears to you as inherent existence, but you know it's an illusion, right? So that's kind of the illusionary-like appearance. And that's very important to understand in relation with these examples. But there's so many misunderstandings. Everything is an illusion, doesn't matter whatever you do. That's completely wrong, right? Our body is not an illusion, our mind is not an illusion, but the way our body appears, that's the illusion. Yeah. So the way things appear, it's an illusion. The table and the microphone, they are not illusions, but the way they appear, very solid, in the mind only they say distant and cut off from the mind, or appearing from their own side, that's the illusion aspect. The microphone is there, the table is there, my body is there, my mind is there, but the way things appear, in a very inherent way, that's the illusion aspect, right? So that's important to understand, because there's so many misunderstandings regarding illusion-like appearance. So you can read, if you, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa is so clear in the Lam Rim Chenmo, the great exposition of stages of path to enlightenment. There's a section of Kansa Gedagme, the reasons to prove the selflessness of a person. Straight after that, there's 2 paragraphs, talking about what illusory appearance actually are. It's very clear. Then Lama Tsongkhapa says very clearly, you only can get an illusory appearance after you have realized emptiness, Of course, you can think similar to an illusory appearance, but it's not exactly the same. Yeah, because those who engage in meditative practices, meditations on generation or completion stage, or Dzogchen, Mahamudra, then it can happen because the mind gets subtle and you habituate your mind to depends how strong your concentration is, to a subtle object, like in generation stage, for example, or a completion stage, very subtle object. If you haven't realized emptiness yet, but you just concentrate on a subtle object, when you come out of that equipoise, or out of that meditative period, then things can appear like misty, as we say, that kind of misty appearance. That's not really illusory appearances, as Lama Tsongkhapa very clearly indicates. That's by the power of a subtle mind going into a coarser mind. There's a period that things appear misty, because your mind is so habituated to a subtle object. Then when you come back to sensory perceptions, then things appear kind of misty, because your mind is going from a subtle to a more coarser mind, and just takes time, But that has nothing to do with illusory appearance. Illusory appearance only happens when you join that subtle mind with emptiness, right? So you realize emptiness, then you come out of that meditation, and then you see things inherent appearing, but you see that at the same time as an illusion, like it says here, Yeah. Thus taught Surya Mitra. Yeah, so that's a quote from the sutras in the Sanskrit as well in the Pali canon, that according to Chandakirti indicates the selflessness of phenomena, right? Because the 5 aggregates are phenomena, right? They're not the self of a person. And if it refers to the self of phenomena, that indicates that even those who follow the Hira and Sravaka paths, Sravaka and Pratyeka paths, the Hira and solitary realizing paths, they have to realize emptiness in order to get liberated. That's one of Chandakirti's arguments, according to the commentaries. There's also various interpretations, but we keep it's not too complicated. Just don't make it too complicated. So why is that so important? Because the verses we are in. Hello? Yeah. The verses we are in the last week we talked about these points, if you remember, that when we talk about the first ground, where was that again? In verse 8. Even when, that's where we were, right? Or in verse 8. Even when abiding on the first ground, the mind of full awakening, he surpasses those born from the sage speech and the Pratyeka Buddhas. Yeah, so the sage speech we talked about, there are the Sravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas. So based on these true lines of Chandakirti, you say if the first ground person, if that person realizes emptiness, and those the Sravaka and Pratyeka do not have to realize emptiness, but just the selfness of a person, according to the autonomy school, then how do you interpret these 2 lines? So Chandakirti is saying that because of the mind of awakening there's a difference. There's no difference from the point of view of the realization of emptiness. So that implies that those who are on the paths to achieve liberation, they also have to realize emptiness, according to the Prasangika school. Right? So last week, I think we went over the 3 types of self, right? Was it? Takchik, Ramachen, Rangitubezeer, and Rangitubetonga, right? Yeah. So we went over I do it in English also then. Yeah. We went over the remember? The permanent, unitary or singular, independent self. Yeah, that's the coarsest one. And then a little bit more subtle than that is this self-sufficient, substantial existing self. Yeah. The self-sufficient, substantial existing self, and we talked about the difference, remember, that it's easy to refute there's no permanent, unitary, independent self. If you realize that your body is impermanent, your mind is impermanent, how can you have a permanent self that is in control of everything? Yeah, so that's quite easy to refute. The next one, the self that appears to be self-sufficient, self-sufficient, substantial, self-sufficient entity is maybe better, because substantial people think about substance, but it doesn't imply it's just an entity. Yeah, like what we say, we said the pilot in the plane or the train driver, right? For the act of flying or for the act of driving the train or driving a bus, the people are really depending on the driver and the pilot. But for the act of flying or driving, the pilot or the driver are not really depending on the people for the act of driving or flying, right? So that seems to be the case. There is a controller that we depend upon, but the controller is not really depending on us. It's just making decisions and where you go and next life and things like that, right? So it looks like there is this self-sufficient entity, that takes the lead, and then also when strong desire arises or anger arises, sometimes this aspect arises, right, as a self-sufficient entity. Yeah. So according to the autonomy school and below, right, the Svatantrika, Madhyamaka and school and below, that for achieve liberation, you only have to realize the selflessness of that particular self. Yeah, that the self, if you realize that the self is empty of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, that makes you, if you have renunciation, of course, gives you the possibility to achieve liberation, according to the autonomy school, right? The Svatantrika school of the middle and below, because the mind only and the sutra and the Vaibhasika, they say the same thing. In order to achieve liberation, you only have to, of course, you need renunciation. Based on renunciation, you enter the paths, and then you only have to realize the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. Yeah, that's their view. But the consequent school here, Chandrakirti says, if that's the case, then you don't have to say then that the bodhisattva is on the first ground surpasses them by the power of full awakening mind. Then you could also say they surpass also from the point of view of the mind, of intelligence, because that's referring to the last two lines of this verse. The first two lines referring to the lineage, why the bodhisattva is why the bodhisattva is surpassing, we say that? Yeah, surpassing the hearers and the solitary realizers by the power of the mind of bodhicitta. And the last two lines of the verse refers to the seventh ground bodhisattva by the power of the intelligence. So that if you look at those two aspects, then you know the first two lines doesn't say by the realization of emptiness. So it implies, according to the Prasangika school, that all beings who want to achieve liberation have to realize the emptiness of phenomena, right? Seeing everything as empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so according to the autonomy school, they say that for liberation, you only have to realize the selflessness of the person. And which selflessness of the person? The person being empty of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. That's according to the autonomy school and below. The consequent school says, no. You also have to realize the selfness of phenomena, meaning emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah, we talked about last time, according to Chandrakirti also and other scholars, that the root of samsara is not the self-sufficient, substantial existing self, yeah, grasping at a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. The root of samsara is grasping at inherent existence. Yeah, that's very clear in the Prasangika school. And that's also, Chandrakirti makes here a very clear point. And all the commentaries on this particular verse, they indicate that in order to get liberated, you have to realize emptiness of the person and also of phenomena. Yeah, so that's scriptural reference is there. You know, there's many other quotes in also if you study those who did BP, the basic program, they know in the Uttara Tantra, there also it's very clear in those texts that even for liberation you need to realize the selfness of phenomena. That's a text by Maitreya, right? So from various scripture references, it seems to be, and also the quote I just started with today, it comes from the Pali as well as the Sanskrit tradition. There it seems to indicate that, according to Chandrakirti, that all those who want get liberation, they want to they need to realize emptiness of the self of a person, self of a phenomena. So there's a lot of scripture references regarding these points. Yeah. Do you want more? That's enough for now. Yeah. But there's also logic and reasoning, which is also very interesting. Because if you realize the selflessness, and I mentioned that last time, initially when we realize selflessness is probably the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. That's probably the first level of selflessness we realize. Yeah? That we see there is no self-sufficient entity being in charge. Yeah? Then after that only you analyze more, you become more clear in your analytical approach and study and things like that, and a combination of the different things we often talk about, of accumulation merit, purify negative deeds, supplications to the guru, one with deity, and reading the great text, and then contemplate. Then, if you have that combination, then eventually you can realize emptiness according to the consequent school, that things are empty of inherent existence. Because if you only have realized the first one, that the self-sufficient, the emptiness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, according to the lower schools, meaning the autonomy school and below, they say that's enough for achieving liberation. According to the consequent school, they say it's not enough. Because you can still grasp at consciousness inherent, and because of that you can get craving and grasping at the time of death. If you have craving and grasping, then you propel yourself into samsara. So even though you might have realized the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, still you can see your consciousness as inherent and your body as inherent, and then grasp at that, and that causes to create karma within samsara. Yeah, so that's one argument. Another argument is, if you really analyze well, means decades of analyzing and reading these texts, and what is the difference between the self-sufficient, substantial existing self appearing and the inherent self appearing. That's very important. Because even the self-sufficient, substantial existing self, there's two different types of appearance. One appearance is as separate characteristics from the body and the mind, that we often call kind of an acquired form of a self. And there's one of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self that seems to be mixed with your body and your mind. Yeah, and that's more an innate aspect, as most scholars agree upon. Yeah, so they can find back these points in Jamyang Shepa's tenets. That's translated by Map of the Profound, I think, by Jeffrey Hopkins, right? Yeah, Map of the Profound. There it's quite well explained. And also I mentioned before in Genwangje's writings. Very clear, very nice. So yeah, that's not translated, I think. No. So yeah, that's two aspects of the self-sufficient, substantial existing self. One, an acquired grasping, which means that the self seems to be separate from your body and your mind, like controller separate from your body and your mind. That's more or less an acquired aspect. Or it seems to be mixed with your body and your mind, like this pilot, or this being in charge, or this train driver, bus driver being in charge. It seems to be mixed with the aggregates, but still be in control, So that's more an innate aspect of the self-sufficient, substantial existing self. So if you realize the emptiness of that, then, and you don't realize the emptiness of inherent existence, then you can still grasp at your consciousness as inherent. Yeah, there's a way of grasping at your consciousness as I, and then seeing this I as a self-sufficient, substantial existing way. Or you grasp at consciousness as I, and then see that I in an inherent way. There's two things, right? So that's very important to study these things and then analyze your mind. See, how does the I appear? Is it more kind of a self-sufficient, substantial entity, or is it more like a more subtler one, like an inherent I? Yeah, so that's kind of only by the power of study and experience and questioning, asking the teachers and going back and forth, that you get an idea about these differences. Because you can imagine, if you only realize the coarser form of a self, selflessness, yeah, this emptiness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, then you can still grasp at subtler forms of consciousness. In the same way, when you achieve calm abiding, when you go to the form realm with your mind, your body still belongs to the desire realm, but your mind goes into the first samadhi, or the second, or third, or fourth, or you go to the samadhis of the formless realms, then when you enter the form realm, your mind enters the form realm. If you have samadhi, yeah, shine, right, the calm abiding, when you achieve calm abiding, your mind enters the form realm. Yeah, so all the afflictions of the desire realm basically are not manifest as long as you stay with your mind in the form realm. So as long as you stay in calm abiding, it's very nice, probably, because the afflictions of the desire realm are basically not popping up, including the coarser form of grasping at a self. Yeah, so some people, they think, oh, there's no self. I've realized no self. But then they say, oh, blissful, nice, interesting consciousness. And then they grasp at inherent consciousness, right? They don't grasp at a coarse form of the self, but they grasp as, I have achieved calm abiding and I'm in this bliss. And then you grasp at inherent consciousness, right? So then you still create causes for samsara. Of course, you create causes for higher realms in the God realms. Is maybe better than going down in the lower realms, but it's still in samsara. And when you're born there, then the merit is finished, and you fall back again, right? So yeah, better invest in emptiness, I should say. Yeah. So you can see that from the point of reasoning, when you get angry or a strong desire arises, it can arise from this self-sufficient substantial existing self, and it can arise from more subtler one of seeing your mind as inherent, for example. So that's kind of what the consequence school use for reasoning. That's the only affliction the consequence school is able to put forward, because other schools are not able to put forward that affliction, because all the other schools, they say, in order to get liberated, you have to eliminate all afflictions and their seeds. And how do you do that? Generate renunciation and realize the emptiness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. Right? But the consequent school said, hey, wait on here. But if you have afflictions coming up, and then they rooted in this apprehension of inherent consciousness, if you haven't realized that your consciousness is empty of inherent existence, you still create afflictions. They might be subtler than the previous one. The self-sufficient, substantial existing self is coarser, but there's a subtler grasping. If you haven't eliminated that subtler grasping, you cannot escape samsara. So that's kind of a reasoning you can also find in the scriptures on the kasa. Yeah, one of my own teachers, he wrote a book, very interesting, on his commentary, very brief commentary on Jesu Gyaltsen's Chidun. They're also very clear. These different possibilities of that you can generate an emotion or affliction based on the self-sufficient substantial existing self, either as different from the aggregates or as mixed with aggregates. Yeah, so either a quiet one or an innate one, but you can also generate afflictions based on an inherent grasping. It makes a lot of sense, So that means that, according to the Prasangika school, that you need to realize emptiness of phenomena, right? And why? And another reason is that if you realize emptiness of the self of a person, meaning the self of the person is empty of inherent existence, then without too much reasoning, you realize the emptiness of inherent existence of your body. You realize the emptiness of inherent existence of your mind. Once you have realized the emptiness of inherent existence of the person, then it's much easier to realize emptiness of inherent existence without too much reasoning of your body and of your mind. Yeah, we say, and that's very clear in the scriptures. First you realize the selfness of the body. First you realize the selfness of the person, and then you realize the selfness of phenomena. Yeah. So we talked about many times before. Why? And that's not very clear in the scriptures, but Kanti Rinpoche, when I asked many years ago, when I was studying midway, I went up for Dokje. Yeah, in the midway studies, not too difficult to see Kanti Rinpoche because it's reason-based. So it's you can But when you study Abhidhamma and Vinaya, it's very scary. Because Kanti Rinpoche will ask you, he didn't look at the text for 20, 30 years and ask you a quote and say, what is the interpretation of this and what says in commentary? And then sometimes you might remember the quote, but not the commentary or the other way around. And then he gives you a very hard time. But they're very compassionate, yeah. But Uma was kind of, many monks are always afraid to see Kanti Rinpoche because, he had this incredible mind that not looking at text for 20, 30 years, still knows exactly, which quote is there, what are the interpretations, It's mind-boggling, really mind-boggling, yeah. So when I was translating once, I translated the Kuya Samaja self-initiation, some people requested, and so I translate, and then went to see Kanti Rinpoche many times also, and then clarify things, and then he said, oh yeah, you can do like this, because practical way, and then it goes in the root text, the root tantra says this, and then in the commentary it says that, and you just take it for granted that we know that. You know, he says, but I don't know, And then he said, oh, you read the commentary, it's a very good one, by the 7th Dalai Lama, So I thought, okay, I look it up. It was like 600 pages. Yeah, I couldn't read the whole thing, but main sections, yeah. Very interesting. But yeah, that's kind of how their mind functions, right? It's that they kind of the manifestations of the traditions. Very, very, very inspiring, to see that. So when we studied midway, I went up to Dokje, kind of questioning things. And then Kanti Rinpoche said 2 reasons, basically, that it is easier to realize the self of a person than it is to realize the self of phenomena from the sutra perspective, right? From the sutra perspective, that's important to know. Yeah. Why? Because the object of refutation is easier to recognize. It's much easier to recognize the self of a person than it is the self of the body or the self of the consciousness or the self of the table. Because the I appears much clearer to the mind when you when afflictions like strong desire or anger or jealousy or pride arise, it's a very strong sense of an I. Right, so the object of refutation is easier to recognize. One reason. The second reason is that the person is imputed. If you see that the person is imputed, then you can make see an easier difference between the imputed person and how the I arises. Because when you say Namdak, or you call your own name, it's not too difficult to see that it's an imputation, right? The person is an imputation. The person is an imputation on either of the 5 aggregates, right? Yeah. So if you see that the person or the I is the person in this case, the person is imputed, then it's much easier to see that that's a name, and to see that the I appears inherent, and it's 2 different things. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the main reasons, 2 main reasons, that the object of refutation is easy to recognize, and because the person is imputed, then it's much easier to recognize object of refutation and to refute it. Yeah, because in order to refute it, you have to know the target. So if you know the target well, then refuting is easier. Yeah, so that's why the self of a person is much easier to recognize than the self of phenomena. Initially. Yeah, in the Sutra system, it's like that. So then if you realize the empty of inherent existence of the person, then without too much reasoning you can realize emptiness of the inherent existence of consciousness and the body and phenomena. Yeah, so first you realize the selfness of a person, and then you look at other phenomena. Yeah, yeah. So that's mostly how it's been explained. So yeah, the first 2 lines of verse number 8 is implying that, of course, the Bodhisattva is surpassing those on the parts of the hearer vehicle and the solitary realizer vehicle by the power of his awakening mind, and not by the power of realization of emptiness. because this realization of emptiness and the realization of emptiness in the mind of Shravakas and Pachekas, the realization actually is the same, but there's a slightly difference there. The difference is that the bodhisattvas, they realize emptiness by the Rigpa Namda Taiba Ko Netoni Tok. That means that they realize emptiness from extensive forms of reasoning. You know, that the bodhisattvas, and you can look, if you look in the different scriptures, those scriptures in relation with the bodhisattva ideal, the perfection of wisdom sutras, there's so many vast forms of reasoning, you know. So there's a way of reasoning, the vastness being explained from the point of view of the scriptures, and the reason being explained from the point of view of the meditation on it. Yeah. If you read the perfection of wisdom sutras, same as with the heart sutra, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. You know, so if you contemplate that again and again, you have various reasons that there's no inherent eye, there's no inherent ear, there's no inherent nose, there's no inherent this, no inherent that. So you use so many reasons as counteracting force, you know, in the scriptures. And then the bodhisattva, in a similar way, it says that they use extensive forms of reasons. Well, the Shravakas and the Pachekas, they have more condensed form of reasonings. And why is that so? Because for liberation, you only have to eliminate afflictions and their seeds, right? But for enlightenment, you have to eliminate obscurations to omniscience. Yeah, that's one interpretation. Another interpretation you can read in, for example, Geshe Gyaltsen. He says because of the power of bodhicitta, it becomes vast, or the motivation of bodhicitta is vast, because it's rooted in compassion, as we saw in the first evening, or the first 2 evenings, right? So because of compassion is vast, the cause is vast, bodhicitta is vast, then the parts are vast, and that results in a vast result. Yeah, so there's another aspect where what indicates the extensive forms of reasoning in the bodhisattva. But the realization of emptiness, that's exactly the same, right? Yeah. Yes, by the power of reasoning, it's easier to, because the vastness of reasoning, it easily tackles eventually the obscurations to omniscience. Yeah, that's probably the reason behind it. Yeah, so that's, is that enough for the first 2 lines? Of verse 8? Yeah, that's just distinction that comes down to 2, those we did last year, the 8 uncommon points, or unique or difficult points, if you like, of the Prasangika. There was 2 aspects there. One was the uncommon presentation of the afflictions in the Prasangika school, as we just talked about, that you can get angry, or a strong desire arises from a self-sufficient substantial existing self, grasping at. Or you can get angry, or a strong desire that arises at grasping at an inherent I. Yeah, so there's 2 different types of grasping. Yeah, and that produces afflictions. So if you only eliminate the first one, then the second one is still there. So you have to eliminate the grasping at inherent existence, meaning you have to realize emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah, that's kind of what the consequent school put forward as a root of samsara, and also that you can discuss from many angles. The root of samsara is apprehension of inherent existence of the self of persons as well as the self of phenomena. Remember last week we did a quote of Arya Nagarjuna, and Nagarjuna said because there's grasping at the aggregates, that's why there's grasping at the I. You remember? Yeah, so Arya Nagarjuna in his Ratnavali, there it says very clearly. So that means that if there's a grasping at a phenomena, then there's a grasping at an I or a person. And then you create karma, he says, and then you create cause for samsara. Yeah? So that's also that we already discussed last week. Yeah, is that a bit clear? That in order to get liberated, according to the consequent school, you have to realize the emptiness of the self of a person and the self of phenomena. You want to have one more angle to that or not? That other angle is, according to the consequent school, the object of refutation of the self of a person and the self of phenomena is exactly the same. Inherent existence. And that's, if you study tenets, you know that in the autonomous school it's different. In the autonomous school, they say the self of a person and the self of phenomena, the object of refutation is different. The self of a person is a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. And the self of a, did I say that correct? Of a person, did I say? And the self of phenomena is to see the self as truly existent. Yeah, so in the autonomy school, they make a distinction between the self of a person and the self phenomena from the point of view of the object of refutation. While in the consequent school, the object of refutation of the self of a person and the self phenomena exactly the same, inherent existence. Yeah, that's also a very interesting point to understand these two lines of the first two lines of verse number 8. Yeah, so in the autonomy school, they say, okay, what is the self of a person? That is a self of a person that grasps at a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. That's the self of a person. Okay, then, what's the self of phenomena? That is that self of a person, no, I shouldn't say that, that self that grasping at true existence. Yeah, if you see the I, you know, the I, and you then grasp at true existence, that's the self of phenomena, according to the autonomy school. Right? So you see in the autonomy school the object of refutation of the self of a person and the object of refutation of the self of phenomena, two different things. Yeah? Do you remember from tenets? Well, from the consequent school, yeah, from the consequent, I see somebody laughing online, so also I have to laugh. Yeah. So from the point of view of the consequent school, the self of a person and the self of phenomena, the object of refutation exactly the same, inherent existence. So that also proves that the consequent school says, if you realize the emptiness of the self of a person, then it's so easy to realize the emptiness of self phenomena, because the object of refutation is exactly the same. Right? Yeah. So that implies that if you realize the one, then without too much reasoning, you realize the other. Well, in the autonomy school, that's not the case. If you realize the selflessness of a person, then it takes much more work to realize the selflessness of phenomena. Because if you realize that the self is empty of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, then it still needs a lot of work to realize that the self is also empty of true existence. Because the object of refutation is different. Yeah? Yeah, does that bit make sense? So that means that in the consequent school, they say the root of samsara is, apprehension of inherent existence. And there's two aspects, self of person, self phenomena. Once you realize one, without too much reasoning, you realize the other. Yeah, so that's kind of, once you get the selfness of a person, then without effort, you realize the self of phenomena. Because the object of refutation is exactly the same. If you realize that a person is empty of inherent existence, then without too much effort, you can realize that your computer is empty of inherent existence. Yeah, or your body, or your mind. Because the object of refutation is exactly the same. Yeah? Well, in the autonomy school, the object of refutation is different of the self of person and the self of phenomena. Yeah? So that's also why that distinction is being made. That in the consequent school we say, for liberation you have to realize both. And in the autonomy school say, for liberation you only have to realize the self of a person and not the self of phenomena. Yeah? So that's another reason. Yeah, that's enough maybe, or not? You convinced now? Yeah. Some people, they get not easily convinced, but I don't know. Yeah. So so you have to review tenets a little bit, and then go back and forth, and then one day you get it, because that's here in relation with the first two lines. There's a lot in the Eliminating the Tent, for example, also in Jetsun Gyatsen text, there's pages and pages about these points. Because there's a lot of, in the past, there was a lot of misunderstandings. What is the root of samsara? It's important to know, right? If you want to get out of samsara, it's good to know what is causing samsara. Yeah, what's the root? Yeah, so that's why there's a lot of debates back and forth, and scripture references and reasonings, as we just talked about, various aspects, to prove that the root of samsara is not just the apprehension of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self. No. It's much more subtler than that. Yeah, the root of samsara is the innate grasping at inherent existence. That's the root of samsara. Yeah, because if you want to get liberated, you have to, you have to realize the emptiness of inherent existence, and then you do that on the part of seeing and the part of meditation, and then you eliminate, samsara. Yeah, so that's the first two lines of verse 8. Then the last two lines. To the power of his merit or her merit, and his or her merit increases even more. Yeah. Meaning if you go over the grounds, yeah, because the first two lines refers to the first ground, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then it says, to the power of his merits or her merits, means your realization of emptiness is the same. You know, if you're on the first ground, second ground, third, fourth, fifth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10, you know, your realization of emptiness is the same. But does that realization have the power or the potential to eliminate the next level of obscurations? That's different. And why is that different? Because you need to accumulate merit as the backup, you know. And then we see so clearly why it's so important to engage in preliminary practices. It's exactly according to the Bhumis, right? Just the realization of emptiness is not enough. You cannot just sit and meditate on emptiness until you be enlightened. It's not going to happen. You have to get out of that meditation on emptiness and accumulate merit in order for the next realization to take the next level of obscurations. Yeah, you have this. You have 10 grounds. You have So you have 9. You know that, right? We went over that. Small to big, or big to small. We did it. Not here, maybe. So you have afflictions on the 10 grounds. Every level, you know, you can think about. Sometimes we say 9 afflictions or 9 aspects. You say big, middling, big, small. So it's 3 for big, and then middling, big, middling, small, 6. Then you do small, big, small, middling, small, 9. Yeah, you have 9. It's just you have 9 groups. That's what it is. And then one you divide into 2, and then you have 10 groups. And then it depends which school of Buddhist philosophy too. But you can just imagine that you have various levels of obscurations, right? Like washing your clothes. This sophisticated washing program. You know, you got your robes. Sorry, I'm a monk, so I always tell stories. Yeah. So then, if you take care of children, sometimes they go to puja and then they have dal, and then when they're young, then the dal is everywhere, you know, on the shantap, you know. So what do? If you do first, you let it dry in the sun, you know, for some time. Then the dal gets dry. Then you can just like this. Yeah, the dal falls off. That's the first obscuration. Yeah. Then you put this bar of soap we have. Before we had a washing machine. After I left, after I resigned as a director, then now they have a washing machine, so it's all degenerating. We did everything by hand for 20 years. Yeah, joking is okay, but yeah. So then you put soap, you know, next level of obscuration. Then you soak it overnight in a bucket of water and some other soap. There's 2 types of soap we use. One is the bar, and the other one is the powder washing soap. We have that here also. Now these days you have paper. You put inside. You have this paper. You put it inside the washing machine, and then all disappears. This is all paper. It's paper package, paper soap. No. Actually, in India, they had paper soap. I remember in the trains. Remember, paper soap. No, yeah, yeah. Chai. One guy comes with chai, and the other one paper soap. So you sell this because in the train sometimes people forget the soap, and then you know you stay for 2 nights, 2 days in the train sometimes. Or my record is 82 hours. But so you need sometimes to wash. You cannot wash. There's no shower, of course, but you know, like this, that, or something like that. So they sell this paper soap. Also that, you know, when sometimes when not very good quality, then it remains a bit of paper between your hands. But there's qualities that just, it dissolves into water, right? Yeah. But anyway, so then you have this clot, and then you get off the first stains, right? The dal is dried, you take off. Then you put a bar of soap, and you how do they call that? You put soap on the place where the dal was, because there's a bit oil involved, you know. And then you soak it overnight, and then tomorrow you take the brush, you know. So that you see there's different levels of as we have in the washing machine program, same thing. We need different levels to eliminate afflictions. So you meditate on emptiness, one affliction gone. You get out of that meditation, you accumulate merit, you go back in meditation, meditate on emptiness, next affliction gone. Yeah, so you have like 10 levels like that, you know. Yeah, so that's the sequence. That only meditation on emptiness is basically just not enough. You need to accumulate merit in between the sessions for the next meditation on emptiness to eliminate the next stain, right? So you can see that the realization of emptiness in all those grounds is exactly the same, but the potential for that realization of emptiness to eliminate the next, more subtler form of stain only happens by the power of accumulation of merit, you know? So that's, quite clear. Does it make a bit sense, this washing machine program, you know? Yeah. So that's what it says. To the power of his or her merits, the merit increases even more. Yeah, by going from the first ground to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then when at the gone afar. So when you see gone afar, is referring to the seventh ground. Yeah, the seventh bodhisattva ground. Then the bodhisattva will also surpass them by his intelligence, you see? So here, not only will he surpass them by the full awakening, but now also by his intelligence. And before was not the case. So that proves that Shravakas and Prachekas, they also realize emptiness. Yeah, that's what it says, you know. Yeah. But then on the seventh ground, then you know what you can do with your mind? You have this. It's very short. Or you do with your eyes. Just close them. You know? It's very short. Yeah. That period, that period, if you ask a person between 60 and 25 years old to do like this, that's the measure, you know, of a short moment of activity, as you could say, Jawa. So that moment is very short, right? At that moment, this bodhisattva on the seventh level can go into absorption of emptiness and get out of it. That's quite something. When we meditate on emptiness, oh yes, okay, now we sit. Oh, first breathe in, breathe out, and then okay, counting breath, and then this and that, and then okay, object gravitation, where is that? Okay, well, can I find it somewhere? And then yeah, so it takes a lot of time. But if you're on the seventh ground, for the time of finger snap or closing your eyelids, at that moment you can go in and get out of deep absorption, right, into the direct perception of emptiness. And that's that. And Sravaka and Pracheka, Sravaka and Pracheka, they cannot do that. Yeah, so that's kind of quite an accomplishment on the seventh ground. Yeah, that's according to Jetsunchuk Gyatsen and many other commentaries on the seventh ground. Yeah, and then you go to the eighth ground, and then you liberate it. Yeah, Bodhisattva on the eighth ground is also liberated. Yeah, because this is a bit a tricky section. If you read the commentaries, it's mainly about proving that in order to get liberated, you have to realize emptiness of inherent existence. That's pages and pages. If you read Eliminating the Intent, also Jetsunchuk Gyatsen commentary, and other commentaries, they have a lot of things about that. Because there was a lot of misunderstandings in the past, maybe, and just to clarify, Dhammasukappa's interpretation in that way. Yeah, is a bit clear? Those points? Yeah? Verse number 8. So yeah, verse number 8 you can see in the commentaries, very substantial commentary. Okay then, maybe we do one more verse. Verse number 9. Yeah, so verse number 9 is talking about generosity in general, because you practice the 10 perfections on the 10 grounds, right? Yeah, so the 10 perfections on the 10 grounds, you know. So mostly we have 6 perfections, right? But then you have 10 bhumis, so you have 4 more. Tap, top, mulam, yeshe. Tap. Then in the Pachin we say tap, top, mulam, yeshe. But in the middle way we say tap, mulam, top, yeshe. Yeah, so that is method. Tap, top. Tap, mulam. Method. Prayer. Top. Power. And exalted wisdom. That are the last 4. But anyway, you can find in the text the last 4 perfections. Yeah. So it starts with the perfection of generosity. Yeah, because generosity, as we know from studying the 6 perfections, is just easier to practice. Yeah. More easier than morality. Right? And morality is easier than practicing patience. Patience is easier than effort. And effort is easier than concentration. Concentration is easier than wisdom. Yeah. So then on the first ground, of course, they practice all the perfections, but their perfection of generosity, in this case, what you could say is I won't say perfect, but it's completely equipped, or at the first bhumi, you know, because perfection only is perfect when you reach the state of Buddhahood, right? Yeah, the perfection is only a perfection at the level of Buddhahood. Yeah, at a level of training, yeah, when the Bodhisattva is in training, is the practice of the perfection. Yeah, but he perfects. You can say he perfects the practice of the perfection, right? You could say that, right? He perfects the practice of the perfection. So on the first ground is the perfection of generosity. On the second ground, morality, and so forth. Yeah. So then on the first ground, he is perfect in his practice of generosity, but not perfect in his practice of the perfection of morality, because that happens on the second ground. Yeah, on the second ground is the stillness, the name of the second ground. That means even in your dreams you don't commit any kind of negative deeds anymore, because of your morality being so pure and trained. Yeah. So on the first ground, when the Bodhisattva practices generosity, then his perfection of morality is not that advanced as it is on the second ground. Yeah, that's just how they go to the perfections. Yeah. So on the first ground, it is called perfect joy. You know. And then he has the perfect practice of generosity. So it says in the verse, at this point, meaning the point of the first ground. Yeah, the first course of full awakening, the first perfection, in order to achieve enlightenment, is the perfection of generosity. Yeah, will be preeminent, committed to give away even his very flesh. Giving becomes a sign of his unseen quality. So the Bodhisattva, and we know that from the story of Asanga, remember? When Asanga was meditating, and then meditating of love and kindness, compassion, you know, to meet Maitreya. Why? In order to understand the hidden meaning of the sutras, right? So then he meditated, he came out in 12 years, you know the story, and then he saw the dog, and then with the maggots and the wound and everything, and then he took a piece of his own flesh, yeah, to transfer the maggots. Yeah, so in some bodhisattvas they give away their eye, like Aryadeva did on his way up to Nalanda, been sent by Arya Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna said, "Oh, I don't have to go, I send my student, he can do it." So then halfway he was asked for his eye, but he got regret, and then he lost his eye. Because he gave his eye away to a person, and the person just threw it away, and then he thought, oh, what have I done? So then it didn't grow back, you know. So then he had to debate Ashvaghosha with one eye. But then he said, oh, Ashvaghosha, you have magic and all kind of things, but I can see more with one eye than you would too. And then they had a debate, right? Yeah. So at the first bhumi, you can give away limbs of your body, you know, or flesh or things like that. But it's for us like, what? Because our mind is so limited, you know, we don't understand that. But you also understand if you have a direct perception of emptiness, then It's slightly different ball game, you know. So then there's also no pain anymore, right? For the bodhisattvas, they have a mental body, as we call it, right? Because they're born by the power of prayers and not born by the power of karma and affliction. Yeah, so there's quite an advanced level of beings, right? When they give away parts of the body, they won't feel the pain of it. If it grows back or not, then maybe it depends on various factors, but there's no real pain. So by hearing another person asking for something, they generate more bliss in the mind than a person who's liberated. You know, so that's kind of why it's called, this perfect joy, right? The name of the bhumi is perfect joy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then that. So don't go tomorrow to the beach and give away your leg to a shark or something. Yeah, you can only do that when you're on the first ground, okay? Yeah. So, otherwise it's a bit complicated. You might lose your life. Yeah. I mean, you fed one shark, but yeah. So don't do that, because we're gonna go for a holiday break, right? This is the last evening for the session. So in a holiday break, don't go to the beach and say, I'm a bodhisattva, I aspire, and blah blah blah, and then you go to give you part of your body away to a shark or something like that. Don't do that. Yeah. Because if you're on that level, then you can decide what's most beneficial, to lose a leg or not. Yeah. Because also the bodhisattvas, they will check, right, what's most beneficial, you know. They're not just going, oh, let's go to see sharks. They don't think like this. Always thinking, what is the beneficial and karmic connection with the shark, and is there benefits or not, like the Buddha did with it, you know, with the the cups, right? And that's very inspiring, because then the Buddha saw, as a bodhisattva, if I give my body away, that's just one thing, but I can get so much further on the path to enlightenment, and I can lead these 5 cups. When I become a Buddha, they become my first 5 disciples. Having seen that, then the Buddha, without doubt, just does it, because that's more beneficial in the long term, right? Yeah, one body is just for one particular lifetime is one thing, but if you can get closer to enlightenment and you can, these 5 cups, you can lead to liberation when you become a Buddha, then the Buddha the Bodhisattva at that time doesn't have to contemplate too much and just does it, you know. So then you can see one lifetime is not really that important, yeah. But it's always based on clairvoyance and the motivation of bodhicitta, and if you don't, and direct perception of emptiness, otherwise you don't do these things, right? Yeah. Okay, let's stop. Yeah, there for tonight, and then we have a summer break. Siestas and things like that, and then we back on the 11th of September, if I'm correct. Yeah, 11th of September. Yeah. Okay, so then, but yeah, if there's questions left before we break up, then and then in the break also try to reread the material and read ahead and read the commentaries if you really want to get out something out of this course, or review the material, or kasa. Listen again to recordings if you think there's my blah 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 is any benefit. But try to go over the material, you know, and try to review things like tenets. So those who have done the 8 uncommon points last year, try to review that material in the summer break, and then try to meditate on emptiness, you know. Try to see what is object gravitation, how does it appear? It appears in a self-sufficient way, inherent way, and how to refute it, you know. Try to walk on that. You have to do things together, right? You study, you accumulate merits and purify negative deeds, do preliminary practices, and then you contemplate, and then you move forward. Yeah, so that's kind of what you can do in the summer break. There's enough to do, you know, if you want to do a few 100,000 of each of the preliminary practices and read all the commentaries and do meditation on emptiness, then probably you can book every single minute of your coming period until the 11th of September. Yeah? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Question in the chat. Could Geshe-la explain the difference between the self-sufficient, substantially existent self and the inherent self?
The self-sufficient, substantially existing self seems to be like this, you know, is a coarser one in the sense it seems to be like this controller, you know. that sometimes appears to be mixed with your body and the mind, and sometimes it seems to be separate from your body and your mind. Yeah, so there's two aspects to that. But it's much coarser than your consciousness, being in the aspect of apprehending that in an inherent way. You can see that the I comes up, right? When you get angry or when there's strong desire, there's an I that comes up. You can apprehend that I or see that I in a very self-sufficient entity that is like controller, Or you have an I that comes up not as that controller, but much more subtle, like from its own side existing I or inherent I. Yeah, so this you can talk about it back and forth, but you just have to get some experience to check your mind constantly and see what kind of I is generating this particular affliction. Is a coarser one like a self-sufficient aspect, or is it more an aspect so the self-sufficient aspect is kind of this where we often in the text we talk about the king and the retinue, or that the retinue depends on the king, and the king is in control, right? Or we have the model example of the pilot or the bus driver or the train driver, right? So you look at that and see how does I appear when you get strong desire, or when there's you close to death. You can also use that aspect, right? You imagine you fall off a tall building, or do a free fall out of a plane without a parachute, or you're in a plane and there's turbulence, or you're in a fall of a boat in the middle of an ocean, or you can imagine that and you're gonna die out of exhaustion, or you're in an accident and there's a slippery thing, and then your car goes against the what's it called? The curb, the thing that catches you, and there's a lorry coming and the lorry can't stop in time, so you're gonna be crushed. So if you imagine those things, then it can happen that there's a very strong sense of an I that comes up. And then also next to the afflictions, then you can see if it's this self-sufficient kind of control aspect, or a more subtle aspect of an inherent I, or inherent body, or inherent consciousness, So yeah, that you can talk about as much as you like, but eventually you just have to sit there and check your mind, right?
Thank you. Next we have Chotso. Is that Venerable Chotso? Is that R-E-B? Yes, it's R-E-B-T-A. Hello, Venerable Chotso.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
I was wondering when you said that probably we realize the selflessness of self-sufficient self first. Are you talking about inferentially or also directly?
Initially inference, right? So even here's been explained from a direct perception, because it talks about the Arya beings, right? So in verse 8, it's from the point of view of Arya beings. But that implies that on the part of accumulation and part of preparation, you initially have to have a conceptual realization of emptiness. Yeah, otherwise you cannot generate a direct perception on the part of seeing. So that means that all those who strive for liberation and enlightenment, even first, initially they have to have a conceptual realization of emptiness, that then on the part of accumulation that has been developed, if it's not been realized before, and then on the part of preparation, on the 4 levels, the conceptual realization of emptiness, they become, as you know, becomes less dual, and then eventually becomes a direct perception. So that's true for all the 3 parts, all the 3 vehicles, right? Sravaka, Prajeka, and Bodhisattva.
So, I was asking this question because sometimes we hear that they realize the emptiness of inherent existence, and at the same time it kind of includes the coarser form, self-sufficient. So is it always like this, or is it only for Shat faculty, or?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part.
I was wondering, because sometimes we hear in teachings that when the Bodhisattva realized inherent existence, the lack of inherent existence self, at the same time, it's kind of like a package. It will realize also the more coarse form.
So, like
So it's not like step by step, first realization of selflessness, of self-sufficient, and then after inherent,
probably.
but it would be like first inherent, and then, so that was more my question about this actually.
Sometimes you hear that if you don't necessarily have to be in that order, you can realize inherent existence, and thereby, like, by the power of that realization, you also realize a coarser form.
Yeah, of course, yeah. If you realize a subtler one, that implies you realize a coarser form, right? But if you realize a coarser form...
Is it always like this?
Yeah, but if you realize a coarser form, it doesn't imply to realize the subtler one. Yeah. And it depends on many bodhisattvas, as we know, certain bodhisattvas of higher faculties. All bodhisattvas, higher faculties, they realize emptiness before bodhicitta, for example. But also with regards to the first initial moment, that's not very clear in the scriptures, right? So most likely, if you see what His Holiness put forward as an example, most likely, most people, they first realize the selfness of a self-sufficient substantial existing self, right? And then the selfness of inherent existence, most likely. But there might be bodhisattvas, I don't know, who maybe the first moment they realize emptiness of inherent existence. Could be. If you have trained your mind in previous lifetimes to this realization, and that realization is still conceptual, so it is degenerated, and then this lifetime, the first moment you meditate on it, and then maybe you get it straight away. I don't know. But that's not clear in the scriptures, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Geshe-la.
Yeah.
Lots of questions. Marilyn.
Hello. Thank you very much for all the teachings. What I would like to ask, to give away your flesh,
Yeah.
to do it, that it is beneficial, should you have a realization of emptiness, or is that not necessary?
If it's beneficial or not, if you have not a direct perception of emptiness, if you're not an Arya being, there will be a lot of pain, right? And it depends also on your clairvoyance and your bodhicitta, that you check, even if you're not an Arya being, but through the power of your clairvoyance, you see, okay, there's a lot of pain involved, but the benefits are amazing. And then you might decide to do it, right? So it depends on various levels of course, bodhicitta should be there, and then clairvoyance and see the benefits of this act over many lifetimes, or your accumulation of merit and your connection with this being and things like that. Yeah. So it depends on many causes and conditions. And even bodhisattvas who are not on the Arya paths, they might take it into consideration, right? To make a decision, even though pain is involved. But if the benefits is greater than, how do you call that? There's a saying, huh? Yeah, the drawbacks, then you might decide. Yeah. But they check, right? It's kind of not kind of wow. they check what are the benefits and the consequences of every act, Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Marilyn. Pema.
Thank you, Geshe-la. So I wondered if you could explain how to think about the different philosophical schools, because I think I have a misunderstanding. So I've written down, if each school refutes the other, then what is the benefit of understanding the tenets of, for example, Sautantrika, Chittamatra, Prasangika, or Yogacara schools, if we are taught, like by His Holiness, that Madhyamaka school is the highest and the most supreme?
Yeah.
How do we think about the function of the different philosophical schools?
So in order to understand the consequent school, which is considered as the most profound, it's advisable first to understand the lower schools. Otherwise you don't see the details, or you don't see the difference. In the monastic system, you know what we do? We debate, and then I uphold the view of the mind only. I know already that the consequent school is much more profound, but in order to understand the mind only, I try to answer as I am a mind only school holder. And I try to see how will they answer when my classmate is debating me the consequent school. So I think, the mind only will say this, the mind only will say that, to get out of the debate and difficult points. So in that way, actually, you learn much more about the mind only school in that way, right? So that's kind of the way to study tenets, to really read first the Vaibhasika school and think about, oh, this makes sense in one way. That makes a lot of sense, the way certain things are presented. And then you go to the Sutra school, and then you see, okay, but this is a kind of a little bit subtler, and then it also makes sense. And then you go to the Mind-only school, and then you see, okay, this now we're going to emptiness of phenomena rather than just emptiness of the self. Oh, interesting. And that's very interesting aspects. And then you go into the two middle-way schools, right? And even you can use various schools in your practice, you know. If you, for example, engage in various practices, then sometimes the Mind-only school has very interesting aspects to how things appear and what actually is reality. So you can use them and then combine them with the consequent school or your understanding of that. So that's the way to get benefit from each school, rather than say, oh, I don't have to study this because the consequent school is more superior anyway. Otherwise, you won't get the consequent school interpretation, right? The main difference, one question, the difference between the self-sufficient, substantial existing self and an inherent self, to get that clear, you have to study the different schools in order to really see the difference, you know? And to really get the subtle object of refutation of the consequent school, you really have to have a good understanding of the autonomy school. Otherwise, you don't see the difference. Yeah. So from personal practice, there's great benefit, and in order to move to the next explanation, it's very advisable to study the previous schools in order to move on the ladder to your understanding, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And is there one book, perhaps written by a Westerner, that will lay out the different schools in a very clear way that you might recommend?
Do I know a book like that? Hmm?
Buddhist Philosophy by Courthouse.
There's a translation, right, of Shankara Buddhoja, no?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Introduction. Yeah, just put it in the chat. We put it in the chat for you? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a book in the bookshop by
Guy Newland. Two Truths. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that? There were several suggestions there. Buddhist Philosophy by Courthouse. Did they suggest?
Tenets. Tashi. Guy Newland, Two Truths. Allez, but that's quite a. That's maybe not what you're asking for. Yeah, it's quite in depth, right? Yeah, there's many other scriptures translated into English, but yeah, I think you have enough now. 3 to read, right? In the summer break. Yeah, in your beautiful garden with the green. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, Sneh.
Greetings, Geshe-la, for Chokor Duchen.
Yeah, hi.
My question was, you had made this comment about the root of samsara is not the selflessness of person, but selflessness of phenomena. And I wish you could explain that again, please.
I mean, it's both, right? The root of samsara is apprehension of inherent existence. Yeah, according to the consequent school. Apprehension of inherent existence according to the consequent school has two aspects, person and phenomena. Because the object of refutation in those two aspects are exactly the same. The person apprehending an inherent I, and phenomena apprehending an inherent aspect. Yeah, so that's why in the consequent school there's no difference in the object of refutation of the person and of phenomena. So that implies that the root of samsara, you could say, is twofold, the self of a person and the self of phenomena, or you could say the root of samsara is the apprehension of inherent existence, which includes both, because the apprehension of inherent existence is a general term, and the apprehension of inherent existence of an I of a person can be there, and the apprehension of inherent existence of phenomena can be there. Yeah? Does that make sense or not?
Yes. So then you also said that for autonomy schools and below, for them, the root of samsara is just the selflessness of person. Did I understand that correctly?
The root of samsara is the self of a person, and then in particular, the self-sufficient substantial existing self, right? Not the permanent, unitary, and independent one, but the self-sufficient substantial existing self. And that's true for the autonomy school, mind-only school, Sautantrika, and the Vaibhasika. Yeah, with the exception of one Vaibhasika sub-school, but I won't go into that detail. Yeah.
I think what I'm still unclear on, Geshe-la, is why does Prasangika, for them, why is selfless as a phenomena so important to understand?
Because if you want to cut samsara, yeah. And they say, and it's not too difficult, if you understand the emptiness of inherent existence of a self of a person, then without too much reasoning, you understand the inherent emptiness of inherent existence of phenomena, right? So that's why the consequent school says, of course, first you realize the selflessness of a person, but then without too much effort, without too much reasoning, they say, you realize the self of phenomena, selflessness of phenomena, right? So that's why they say, if you want to get, if you want to get liberated, if you realize the self of a person, on the part of seeing, on the first bhumi, or on the part of seeing, or the Shravaka Pracheka parts, then of course within the next, before that already you have realized the self of phenomena, already when you have a conceptual realization of the selflessness of a person, initially on the part of accumulation, for example. If you realize this for the first time, if you haven't realized it before, you realize the selflessness of a person, then without too much reason, you realize the self of phenomena. So those on the part of preparation, of course, they have realized conceptually already the selflessness of phenomena, right? And then it just gets better and better, and then becomes a direct perception of emptiness in the part of seeing. Yeah? Yeah?
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Yeah. Okay.
How many questions are there in the Gompa? Do we have any questions? Okay, cool. I think we won't be here that much longer.
Thank you again. So, just to clarify then, according to the Prasangika school, do hearers or Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, do they attain liberation? Or, because I'm just trying to figure out, is it like, do they actually attain it? Do they realize the selflessness of phenomena but they don't think they have or know they have? Or?
It depends. If you say, your position is the Prasangika school, right? Mm-hmm. And the person on the Shravaka and Pracheka paths, are they also Prasangika view holders or not? That's the question.
Well, not normally, right? Usually
not.
Normally,
yes. If you give the presentation of the Prasangika school, then all the hearers and the Prachekas, they realize emptiness. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Also, when you study grounds and paths, exactly what we're talking about. Because from the point of view of the Prasangika, all the hearers and Sorotara they realize emptiness.
But I mean, I meant like no, because isn't it normally that if you're a Shravaka Pratyeka Buddha, then you follow the lower schools of tenets?
No.
No?
No, that's a miss. That's often people read that often, because sometimes we say there's more emphasis on the Vaibhasika and the Sutra schools, right? In the Shravaka and Pracheka teachings. But you can see that even in those teachings, the Buddha taught, although very briefly, selflessness of phenomena, right? Also, if you read, for example, within the tradition of the Theravada tradition, for example, and you read Mahasi Sayadaw's works, in particular, A Manner of Insight, you see exactly there's the selflessness of phenomena is there. When you contemplate the four close placements of mindfulness, the body or the mind, it's there. So that means it's there. So according to the consequent school, for the presentation of the consequent school, then of course, all Shravakas and Prachekas, they realize emptiness on the path of seeing and beyond, direct realize emptiness, according to the consequent school. But another thing you can say, okay, we have proponents of the school of, let's say, the autonomy school or the Vaibhasika school, right? That are we call the upper and lower Abhidhammas. So they put forward their arat being liberated based on having realized the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantial existing self, but not the selflessness of inherent existence. Then we, as consequent school upholder, we say those are not arhats according to our interpretation, they are arhats according to their interpretation. And whatever is an arhat according to their interpretation is not necessarily an arhat according to our interpretation. So they might have eliminated certain amounts of coarse forms of afflictions, but they haven't eliminated samsara. Yeah, so that's kind of, you see that?
I think so.
So from the consequent school, if there is a presentation of the Vaibhasika, a presentation of the autonomy school, and they say, okay, these are our arhats, then the consequent schools refutes that. They say, no, they haven't realized emptiness. But within the presentation of the consequent school, all arhats have eliminated samsara, and before becoming an arhat, they had a direct perception of emptiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's very helpful, because I think what
And then if you study the Theravada tradition in particular, what I find a very clear book is Mahasi Sayadaw's Manual of Insight.
Yeah.
I haven't read much about in the Theravada tradition, but that's very clear there that there is the selflessness of phenomena as well, right?
Yeah, because I thought what was going on here is that the Prasankika were refuting like arhats in general, as opposed to they're refuting other schools' interpretation of
Exactly, it's refuting
Yes.
other schools' interpretation.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
in general. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-la.
Yeah.
My question, which actually arises from something you said, is abiding nirvana.
Abiding.
So, if we have, who is at risk of abiding nirvana?
This is Shravakas and the Prachekas, right?
So, if they are liberated,
Yeah.
abiding nirvana, in my understanding, is grasping at the pleasure of nirvana. What is it then?
No, you have to make a distinction between, that's often, sometimes we say self-cherishing, right? So a person who strives for liberation and has achieved liberation has abandoned self-cherishing. And there's no grasping at the inherent nirvana, right? It's kind of there's often a misunderstanding. We say, tarba dunyargilo means a mind that aspires to achieve nirvana. That is completely different than a grasping at nirvana or a self-cherishing attitude. A self-cherishing attitude or grasping at nirvana are afflictions. And they abandoned when you achieve nirvana, abiding nirvana even, right? So a person on the level of abiding nirvana has eliminated all afflictions and their seeds. That means there's no self-cherishing, there's no grasping at nirvana, right? Yeah.
So what is abiding nirvana?
So what is abiding nirvana is kind of probably you have to eliminate all afflictions, together with their seeds, and then you just abide in that, in the meditation on the selfness of a person or selfness of phenomena.
So is the lack of
It's just, you can imagine there are just very subtle bodies, sometimes in the Pure Lands or in the upper realms, that there's a very subtle body with just in absorption on emptiness. That's it. And they don't act to work for the benefit of beings like a Buddha does, right? Yeah. So that's why we say Buddha is non-abiding nirvana, because they act, they have emanations and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because an arhat, an arhat in abiding nirvana, didn't create the causes to emanate bodies, right? All his karma to be born is completely exhausted, so that person cannot be reborn or cannot have an emanation body or something like that, because there's no cause for an emanation body. But then the Buddha knocks on their door, from the point of view of his mental power, and shakes them up out of their abiding nirvana and says, you have to become Buddha, and then teaches them. And then, of course, over time, they create causes to become a Buddha, right? And then they create causes for emanations. Yeah? Yeah.
Okay, we're running a little bit over time, but if it's okay, we'll continue with the questions, because normally I would say let's carry them over until next week, but next week is in several weeks' time. So
yeah, 1 month and 2 weeks.
You okay to keep going for a bit?
Yeah. 2?
3.
3, okay.
4.
Yeah. Yes, no answers, okay?
Okay, yes, no answers. Victoria.
I'm not sure if this will get a yes, no answer. The discussion brought up, as I've mentioned before, my field of inquiry is interfaith, and different spiritual traditions. And this idea that what came up in the conversation with the questions before about the different schools, made me think of two things. One thing was, isn't it hard if it's like, this is our school and this is your school?
Yeah.
Isn't it hard to eliminate the self if people are
debating? Very good. Yeah.
I mean, doesn't it sort of get into a conundrum inherently?
Yeah. No, it's not the wrong school, but it's a particular view we refute, right?
Right. But the view is still, people identify with their view. But anyway, that's their problem, right? Yeah. So they can work that out on their own with their own karmic
and regarding interfaith and other non-Buddhist schools, for example, that's your question?
Yeah. Well, so here's my question: I was wondering as I was listening to those questions and your answers about like in the Jewish tradition, that would be the Talmudic scholars that would be discussing. And so it's like a commentary, an ongoing commentary that goes through the millennia about the scriptures. But my question is actually: could there be like a bodhisattva component to this, in the sense that by understanding like a false view, someone can then is better equipped to lead the person with the false view towards enlightenment. In other words, if I don't understand the false view that the person holds, it's harder for me to lead that person to the truth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I was
perfectly sense.
But I was thinking there's kind of a bodhisattva thing here, but I'm not sure if I was just making...
Bodhisattva also, will always check. First of all, what's beneficial, in the next life? A Buddhist teacher or another religion or other form of faith? And there's many examples like that, right? If a particular society or group of people, Buddhism will not be of great benefit, then they can decide to teach something else. So that's one aspect. And then with the view, it's actually the same. If people are not ready, then you don't teach particular subtle views and you teach more coarser views, right? So then in order to lead them further, and then you can see in different forms of tenets and different forms of religion, there's different interpretations, And then another aspect I want to bring up, because I didn't talk about that, it's important to know as well, that when we classify in the Buddhist tenets, when we talk about certain views of non-Buddhist scholars or non-Buddhist views, is one way if you really talk with the people in that view, especially in the Hindu tradition. I had a lot of friends in India, and particularly in Bangalore. One of my friends was very well versed in the Vedas and aspects of philosophy in the Hindu tradition. And it's very interesting. Sometimes we agree upon mind-only like views, so you can see that how it is presented in one particular tenet system doesn't imply that every philosophy in that tradition is exactly as how we present it. Yeah, because then if you talk with those people, then you have other interpretations, and then you see, wow, it's very close to mind only, or even with the Prasangika view. It's same with us. We engage in dialogues with scientists, exactly the same thing. Certain scientists' interpretations are very similar to mind only, or similar to the consequent school even, right? So that's kind of, that openness should be there in checking things out and discussing, and that's true with interfaith and science and things like that as well. It's important to know also.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah. Next one is Terrell.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for these wonderful teachings, and to follow up on your fantastic advice for our summer vacation, not to give ourselves away to the sharks if we're not at that level yet. Yeah. A side question, could you please explain how, you said it was Aryadeva, yes, gave away an eye and regretted it? Yeah. So how, if such a being only gives away body parts like that, essentially after having the ability to perform an analysis of benefit that you described as I understood it, then how would then one regret such a decision? Yeah. Because wouldn't the analysis ahead of time have been performed regardless of whether the gift he gave the person used it as they did? Or so sorry, that's my question. Thank you so much.
I mean, it probably depends on many causing conditions, right? It depends on the level of the realization of the person who gives away the eye, and it depends on which karma is left of that person and what kind of mental state is there, if there's kind of regret or slight regret or lesser regret. There's various factors that play a role. Yeah, that might be still karma sitting there that hasn't been ripened and still has a potential to ripen, right? Because they're not beyond cause and effect yet, right? Even an Arya being is born by the power of prayer, but it depends on karma and afflictions to be reborn, right? So they're not beyond samsara yet. They still have karma. So that could be a factor of various aspects of maybe a little bit of regret, or maybe I should have done it, or something, just a mind like that, just maybe for a second, and then say, oh no, I shouldn't regret it. But yeah, it could be just a fraction, and then that activates a particular karma, and then that causes the eye not to be regrow. I see. Yeah, regenerated. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. In the autonomy school and realizing the selflessness of phenomena, why is the lack of true existence of the self contemplated and not the lack of true existence of the aggregates?
That's also contemplated. I didn't clarify that, but in the autonomy school, then also you realize, you contemplate that the self of the person is empty of true existence, but you also contemplate that the self of the aggregates or your mind or phenomena are empty of true existence. But both of them, the self of the person, that's very important to know. That's why I mentioned only the first one. The self of the person being empty of true existence, that's also the selflessness of phenomena. Right? So that's the distinction I want to make clear. But also the table being empty of true existence is also the selflessness of phenomena. Yeah.
Thank you. Last question.
Yeah. Last one. I take a sweet maybe today.
Thank you, Geshe-la, for the teachings. I'm just still a little bit confused about the function of the merit.
Okay.
So this is probably more practical or from a psychology point of view rather than theoretical question. So when you realize, deep in, just flash into the emptiness, you understand, perceive it, and why it need to come out and accumulate merit and to continue to deepen the understanding. So why it's so important in this process, the merit?
Because in order to eliminate the next level of afflictions or obscurations, as we call them, right? You need this kind of what we call this backup merit. That the initial realization of emptiness doesn't have the power to do that. Same as a sophisticated washing machine needs various programs. So in order to eliminate afflictions, we need various tools to do that. In a similar way, your initial realization of emptiness cannot come from just reading a book.
Yes.
Yeah. So you need various causes and conditions for initial to realize it. Then for that realization to move into a direct perception. It doesn't just come by itself. You need, in the same way, for your initial realization of emptiness, you need accumulate merit and purify your mind. It's very clear. So then, in a similar way, for direct perception, you also have to do that.
But merit doesn't mean purification, right?
Merit is one aspect, is purifying the mind. The other aspect is engaging in virtue, right? If you engage in virtue, you build up what we call merit. Merit is just a collection of virtuous activities. Yeah. And that propels your mind in the potential to eliminate the next level of afflictions or the next level of obscurations. In a similar way, for the initial realization of emptiness, you need to engage in those activities, right? Accumulate merit and purify negative deeds.
But we saw a lot of people have a lot of merit, but they are not quite, expelled to go to the wisdom way.
Yeah.
Didn't see the direct link between the two.
I mean, merit, we talk about not just one lifetime being a good human being, but we talk about countless lifetimes of accumulations of positive deeds, right? In order to initially generate bodhicitta and to realize emptiness, And then it's kind of vast. It's many lifetimes I needed to do that, Some people are very materialist, but you can see some people are extremely intelligent. But when it comes to emptiness, they just don't get it. There's a sign that intelligence by itself is just simply not enough. And some people can have a conceptual understanding, but when they ask kind of experiential aspects, when they talk, it's kind of, what? Because it's just words. you know. So that means that if you have an intellectual understanding, but you're lacking the faith and the aspects of the practice of what we talked about many times, right? Accumulation, merit, purify negative deed. Then their understanding in the words, fine, but when it comes to the meaning, it's not really there. Same with Naropa, right? When Naropa was a scholar for 500 lifetimes. Then Vajrayogini appeared and said, "Oh, do you know what you're reading? And then, do you know all the words you're reading?" And then he said, "Yes." And then Vajrayogini was pleased and smiled. And then she said, "Do you know the meaning of what you're reading?" And then he says, "Yes." And then she started crying. He said, "I don't think so. You have to, you have to find a guru and go into these practices, and then you get it." And then he got it. So that's from many angles, from biographies, from the scriptures, that we see there's this need for engaging in these practices to move from intellectual understanding to the realization.
Are you talking about if you have the merit, so you would gather all the conditions somehow together, and for your intention of realize emptiness or bodhicitta to flourish or to bring it to fruition?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. You just need so many causes and conditions. And we can see, some people, they're good in memorization, but they're not good in logic. Some people are good in logic, but not good in memorization. Some people are not good in either of the two, like myself. Yeah. So that means that there's so many levels of intelligence. You need so many causes and conditions. You have to study these things in previous lifetimes in order the next lifetime to be good. And you have to accumulate some merit, and you need some effort. And there's so many things important to make it all happen, Yeah.
Okay, great.
So that's why we make prayers and dedications and study and contemplate and accumulate merit and think about lifetimes. And then, there you go. So that's why we make prayer now.
Making a prayer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not one, many. Yeah. Okay, so then dedicate, and then when we make the prayer, also think you're making the prayer, and then the prayer itself, or the activity of praying, and the aim we pray towards too. All those three are empty of inherent existence and in the nature of dependence. And that's exactly what we call the power of the truth, right? That the prayer will come through because of that dependence, Yeah, so think like that. And especially today, then think, having studied for the last few weeks, emptiness, according to Chandrakirti's interpretation, that's very fortunate. It's almost impossible to have met, teachings like this. It's very, very fortunate. So they also try to make prayers in this and all future lifetimes, may not always to be able to study it, but realize it, and go on the grounds and paths. In particular, the bodhisattva grounds, the bhumis, direct emptiness realizing and engaging in the vast activities in order to progress all the way up to enlightenment. And also try to dedicate, so you can think, which is very powerful, especially today. I dedicate like all the Buddhas of the past have dedicated, or all the Buddhas of the present are dedicating, or all the Buddhas in the future will dedicate. I dedicate exactly the same way in this vast aspect, right? Yeah, so think and count and then we recite. Yeah. Yeah.
Karjeram Zupa Sundeng Yurmizin Pachegi Jeda Tembe Perdu Nurjun Sho Janjo Sanjurim Poche Mage Panangi Girji Gyabanyam Mebayang Gumne Gumdu Belwar Sho Tongni Tawarim Poche Mage Panangi Girji Gyabanyam Mebayang Gumne Gumdu Belwar Sho. As long as space remains, as long as migrators remain, until then I too remain to dispel the suffering of migrators. May the King of Dharma, Samkapa's way of Dharma practice, flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified and all the conducive circumstances be complete. To the power of having made single-pointed request to you, Lord Sandrapa, may all unfortunate manifestations of the degenerate age, illness, famine, quarreling, epidemic disease, courthouse spirits, interference, and so forth be pacified. May excellent collections of conducive conditions increase. Please bless me that my wishes be swiftly fulfilled. By invoking the power of loving kindness and compassion of charity, and through the force of making extensive prayers, may all sickness, war, fighting, and famine be completely pacified, so the beings have long, healthy, and happy lives. May the glorious Guru's lives be long and stable. May all beings equal in the extent of space have happiness. May I and others without exception accumulate merit and purify negativities, and may be blessed to quickly attain Buddhahood. Yawa Kunto Yanda Lama Dandra Me Chugi Pela Lanchuchi Sada Langi Ante Razane Dorje Changi Gopanyu Tosho.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a pleasant, what do I say? Summer. Yeah, and yeah, be careful for the crocodiles and the sharks, and see you in September.